Hello everyone, welcome, and today I wanted to talk about something that has just been on my mind here recently, and I've really just been wanting to share it. I've been off YouTube for a while, and I'm not really going to come back. I just want to make this one video here. This is a message to both believers and unbelievers. I'm not going to try to convert you, don't worry about that. I'm just trying to explain something that has just kind of troubled me over these past 5-ish months, I would say. So there is a very popular belief that God does his works by people asking him to them by prayer. And I think this is mainly given off by the verse that you see in Matthew 7:7, where it says, "Ask and will be given to you." And while this is true, it can easily be taken out of the context of our lives, I should say, and make us believe whatever we want God will give. And this just bothered me, as people would complain, sometimes they would even go away from God because they're like, well, God didn't give me what I wanted. So, maybe he doesn't exist, or, maybe he doesn't really care about me. And that's just not true. And that's what I really wanted to talk about here, is that prayer is a little bit more complicated than just simply asking God what we want. The thing is, there's two types of prayer, and the one that I'm going to be going over mainly is self-prayer. The other one is prayer for others. I'll talk about that briefly and at the end, but what I'm trying to say here is self-prayer can be an act of reassurance for God's plan or will. In other words, God doesn't move mountains because you ask him to. He tells you he will, and if you have enough faith through prayer, he'll show you. So God tells us things. So that's one thing I wanted to address here. It's the very, very beginning when I said, God tells us, a lot of people will ask, well, how do you know? Well, usually what you'll see, and I'll give physical signs first because those are probably the easiest to identify, is a warmth, especially in the hands. I mean, it's all over the body, but especially in the hands. It'll literally become sweaty sometimes, on the hands. It kind of makes no sense. For me especially, I heard this from other people, especially for me, a nasal, fire or something like that. There's a lift of pressure off your chest right here. So that's kind of the physical signs. There are other ones, but those I kind of just wanted to bring to light, especially the last two. And then what you get is a brief moment of unconscious or uncontrollable thinking. So you're not really thinking in the conscious anymore. It's just the unconscious. Now, this could also be a sign of the devil, but this usually you can kind of decipher between it because of the other things. One is that it's in agreement with the Bible. Now, that's applicable. Sometimes you're not going to have the Bible right next to you, but if you do, then definitely use that to kind of decipher usually. And an unexplainable feeling of confidence. And this is the main thing that I have noticed between the voices of God and the devil, is that the devil makes a lot of sense in the mind, but God's voice is in the heart. And I know there's the heart, heart's part of the mind. I don't care. You know what I mean. It's in the heart. And it's just an unexplainable feeling of confidence, and that's faith, That's faith. It's that unexplainable confidence that you get. Sorry for the noise in the background. There's a lot of stuff going on. I don't even know. But, God tells us in so many ways. A lot of times it can be important. But he can also give some random things. One time, so God can tell us through dreams. That's one thing. And one time, this wasn't the main story of the dream, but one time God told me that a friend of mine, pretty much when school would begin, he would tell a joke about a mailman, or the punchline would be about a mailman. I'm like, really? What's funny about a mailman? I didn't understand that. I didn't even think it was really from God, but I kind of did. That's how it is with God. Usually your mind's oh, that was just gibberish. But sure enough, first week of school comes around, and my friend's just I think he was just got into this awkward situation, and then he just was hey, look, a mailman, and then he did this dumb run jog. In retrospect, it really wasn't even that funny, but it was really crazy just to think this is, he was talking about a mailman in the dreams, and then this is what ends up happening. It was really just surreal for me. And I'll say this, yes, that really didn't have that much significance to it, but it was a warning sign in the dreams, that this was kind of a timestamp almost, because this dream was talking about pretty much a year, honestly. I've had multiple dreams, but this one was one I probably look back to probably the most out of all the other ones I've had. But this one is kind of like a timestamp, like, okay, when this happens, then this thing will happen soon. So, I don't know, it's very surreal for me, and I should also say that, if some people make the argument, it's like, oh, well, God will only tell you metaphorical things, so then you can just easily believe that. And that's just simply not true at all. I mean, He does give us metaphorical things, usually when it's something that's going to happen later down the line, like eventually, or talking about something like more of a broad scheme of things. But many times he'll just tell you very specific things. And, he tells us these very specific things, like the mailman thing. And he'll usually do this when it's, like, happening really soon. Like, that's one thing I've noticed about. He'll be way more specific about things and pretty much give exact details on things when it's happening, like, in a day or maybe 2 days or something like that. That's just one thing I've noticed. I mean, he can also be specific for things in the future, but usually if you see something more specific, then you better prepare, because it's happening soon. So, I get another thing is, like, why should we trust this voice? Like, why should we? And, like, this is one thing that I also struggled with, because sometimes like every human in existence, I lose faith in God. Like, I mean, I'm not always going to believe or even follow the voice of what God's telling me to do. But the thing is that when I do, He is right 100% of the time. And man, if you guys knew me in real life, like, I'm a realist. I'm a legit realist, like, in real life. Like, realist in real life, I just realized that, whatever. But, like, I mean, I'm all for, like, the quote, like, nothing happens 100% of the time. I'm all for that quote. But God is the only exception. Every single time that I have followed that voice, He was right, even if it literally made no sense. Now, sometimes, like, it, it's not completely unlikely. I mean, sometimes God will tell you things that, could definitely happen. But other times, He tells you things that are just like, what? Like, it's just crazy, man. And, I actually came to this realization of, how prayer is actually supposed to be like through one of these times where I trusted His voice and followed it, even when it literally made no sense to. And about a few days ago, I remember I was praying, and God told me, you need to go on this walk. I have something to tell you. So he told me to place, like, I've been there before, so it wasn't like completely out of the ordinary. I go on walks with the Lord all the time. It's really nice to do that. But so he tells me to go on this walk, and I think I went inside and I came back out. I was taking my dog with me and all that. He loves it too. But I remember I looked up, and there's just big black mess in the clouds. Like, it looks terrible. It's like you could hear thunder all around. I mean, it wasn't raining then, but you could hear thunder all around. Like, like, I looked at the weather, and it was like, yeah, it's gonna be raining like the next 5 to 10 minutes. I think it's like pretty much just gonna happen. I mean, just from where I could see the clouds and, like, based on where I live, it's like, yeah, that's coming to me. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go back inside. And then I just heard, like, no, it's not gonna rain. You're not gonna get wet. And I was like, no. Like, I don't believe in that. But it was just confidence that, like, it was in my heart. That's what I'm saying. It kept me going. So I did the walk, and the way there, oh my gosh. Like, I was, of course, the way there, I'm just walking toward the storm. Like, literally, my eyes are focused right where the storm's coming. And it was terrible. Like, all the entire time, I was just like, I should probably turn back. And the thing is, like, sure, I was a little bit afraid of getting wet, but what I was really afraid is I knew that was God's voice. I knew it was God telling me, you're not going to get wet. And I was like, I was afraid that I would get wet, and that would, take some problem. Like, that would be a problem. That God told me that I was not going to get wet, and I did. Then, like, why do I even believe in this? If it's not right 100% of the time. But I remember I kept going, like, even though I could have, like, I'm giving, like, an example, like, just, like, cash out or whatever, play it safe or whatever, instead of, risking it, just, like, go back. But no, I kept going, because, I don't know, I just kind of knew that I wasn't going to get wet. And eventually I did turn back at this intersection. I remember I saw it, and I could even hear God's like, okay, yeah, when you get here, then turn back. So I did, and the way back was not as bad. And that was when I actually did kind of come to the realization through prayer, because my mind wasn't completely in shambles and all that. But I don't know, it's just something that when I was thinking that, I was like, I don't think like, I mean, maybe God did stop the rain a little bit for me, but he is omnipresent, you know? What I'm saying is that God knew it was not going to rain, so he told me, and he wanted me to believe that that was God's voice, so then I could trust him more. If I didn't believe that it was God's voice and just something else, then really, like, how am I going to increase my faith? There's no way. Because you're not even believing that this, voice, like this majestic voice, is really an important one. So, yeah, and I think another thing that I should talk about is, prayer is not just reaffirmation, but prayer can also give us a sense of rejection for our own premises that is of the flesh. So if you want something that could be a detriment and pray to the Lord about it, God will just shut it down. And he could do this by either giving a feeling such as a loss of confidence, tiredness, especially for me. Like, that's the thing that I get, just tiredness. And even hatred toward it. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, hatred's all bad. No, I mean, the Bible says, love what you love, hate what you hate. Like, hate is not all bad. I mean, you have to hate evil. Otherwise, like, you're not going to get anywhere. So, I mean, what I'm talking about, this kind of goes back to what really bothered me, was how people would, like, ask for these things that they want, and they wouldn't get it. That's because God knows that wouldn't help them. They're asking for the serpent without even realizing it. So, you need to, when you're in prayer, you need to be open-minded that what you believe is not always the right thing, and usually will not be the right thing. That is another thing, that you're usually wrong. I mean, you're not always wrong, but you are usually wrong. So you need to go to prayer where you actually can hear God telling you what you should actually do. And if it is God telling you, then you'll get reassured. If not, then you'll kind of lose confidence in it. And this can also be taken back to going to the past. Like, you can kind of like look back, and you can either see these spiritual triumphs, or you could see these things where you were wrong and you need to forgive yourself for it. For instance, I mean, God tells you that you need to forgive for the things that you have done and the things that you have left undone. So one of these is the thing that I've left undone, and where one person one time left me a note that I was supposed to read, and I knew God was even telling me, like, you should read this note, and I didn't. And it's like one of those things where I had excuses, and I used them for a decent amount of time. I mean, you always get excuses. The devil, he's all one for excuses, okay? He's always going to give you an excuse. And you can either justify your wrong by using those excuses, or you can just forgive yourself for it. So then you can actually, have, this roadblock between you and God goes away. That's what forgiveness is all about. So I did end up forgiving. I didn't even use those excuses, and it just is relieving, This is not the only time I've done wrong. I do it so many times. Usually for me, it's the things that I leave undone. This is just one example. So you need to forgive yourself for it, and then you can truly see what God wants you to do. So thinking prayer is God giving you what you ask can be dangerous. God isn't a character in your story. You're a character in God's story. I mean, you got to stop being closed-minded toward this and think that God's only going to be helping you because you're supposed to be helping God. And that's one thing that one thing I kind of learned through my I've been pretty much accepting God for about a year, maybe a little over that. So in my year of this, that's really one thing I've learned, is that I'm definitely less, and my story doesn't matter. What matters is my story and God. So, what I would say is the only thing that we really should ask for is God to align our hearts to his passions and desires the Lord wants for us. This is one thing I do all the time, one thing I even pray to other people about as well. And I should also say, like I said at the beginning, that what I was talking about all here is self-prayer. And I'm going to briefly touch over right now about the other type of prayer, which is prayer for others, which is equally as important, if not maybe even more important, honestly. I mean, I don't know, but it is definitely important. I don't really know much about this. I haven't really had that much of a revelation. All I can say is that it definitely does work, just from all the stories I've heard, and all the people that have had these lives changed, and there's always these people praying in the background. I mean, my uncle is he was in an abusive relationship and everything, and our family just would come together and pray. and he's gone away from that. Even though he doesn't even believe in God, he had a spiritual experience that led him to go away from this abusive relationship and to seek our family for help. I mean, it's just crazy. So, I mean, yeah, and prayer can be a two-way benefit, and the thing I don't understand is like how a prayer from us can affect the life of someone else like that. But I mean, also it does affect the sender of the prayer, because when they do pray for this and then they see this actually happen, then their faith in God can also increase. So it's just a really nice concept that both the receiver and the sender of the prayer will have increased faith in God. So I hope you guys have learned something from this video, and yeah, I'll be praying for you guys. So for now, this is goodbye. I'll try to answer comments and see you guys later.